Good morning to everyone tuning in right now. It's currently 10:26 a.m., 15 degrees cloudy here in New York City.
Our first story today is brought to you by the United States election. With it taking place later this year, Democrats and the Republicans are in the campaign process of deciding who will be the next party leader. Focusing on the Democratic Party, for today's story, their leaders would be either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton.
During a press conference in South Carolina last week, Bernie blamed America's poverty crisis on Hillary for her husband's welfare policy in 1996, stating, "During that period, I spoke out against the so-called welfare reform because I thought it was scapegoating people who were helpless." Secretary Clinton at the time had a very different position on welfare. She strongly supported it and worked hard to round up votes for its passage.
Instead of focusing on the controversial statements made by Bernie Sanders, we decided to give all our attention to the real issue, poverty. Since poverty is such a broad topic, we decided to narrow it down to why are people of color more likely to suffer from poverty in the United States.
Now, we're going to send it to Luca and Josh down in the studio.
Thanks, Luca and Josh. Did you know that African Americans and Hispanics have a greater than 10% chance of being food-stricken than Caucasians and Asian Americans? This statistic is extremely alarming. We couldn't believe what were our findings, so we had to dig deeper into this dilemma.
According to the Huffington Post, it states that children of color are 4 times more likely than their white peers to be born into a poor family and suffer a lifetime of consequences. So, since the children are born into it, they are never given the opportunity to consume food since their parents/guardians can never afford to purchase enough food to feed their own children. Now that we've learned more in detail why they're in poverty, the question alters to, how are they still stuck in poverty? The issue has been prevalent since at least the 1900s. To quote Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, "Ain't many guys travel around here," he mused. "I don't know why. Maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other." The author characterizes how all the migrant workers suffering from poverty felt during the Great Depression because it was a huge time for struggle for thousands of people.
Furthermore, according to the American Psychology Association, minority groups in the United States are highly more likely to receive higher mortgage rates. This relates enormously back to the issue regarding racial profiling because it isn't appropriate to judge a person by their color.
Also, according to Feeding America, as of 2014, African Americans are more than twice as likely to become unemployed compared to the Caucasian race in the United States, along with their average income being about $35,000, while Caucasians' average income is around $60,000.
With low incomes, this leads to African Americans and Latinos are more likely to attend high poverty schools compared to Asian Americans and Caucasians. It becomes a cycle for them.
As stated previously, people of color are born into poverty and remain in poverty for the rest of their lives. And for each generation passes it on to the next because they aren't able to break that mold. They're stuck and will continue to remain stuck unless we find a solution to it. Now, we'd like to show you a quick interview that we did with one of Stanford's finest scholars regarding this issue.
Think of the statistic that 26% of African Americans and 25% of Hispanics will experience food insecurity, while only 11% of Caucasian will experience food insecurity.
I find that to be pretty surprising, especially because it's in America, which is normally like a first world country, so you wouldn't expect to hear that from somewhere like there. You'd expect that more maybe in like an African country.
What do you think we can do to solve this problem?
Well, I think we need to address the issue of that. There seems to be like a race barrier here, so we need to create more, like, I would say, equal education opportunities for everybody, along with providing more government funding for these impoverished people so that they can afford food, and maybe open up more food banks. Like, I think that'd be a big benefit for people.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
The battle of poverty in the United States will be protracted as one. What we, as a society, must tackle this major complication in steps. Everyone needs to treat others equally because this prejudice sets us apart.
For example, as we stated previously, African Americans often have a higher mortgage. Mortgages should not be based off a person's color. People deserve equal opportunities because, in a sense, we are all equal as human beings. Poverty, indeed, is decreasing, but we must fasten this process because tens of millions of people in the United States every year are still suffering from it, and an enormous number of them are people of color. An activist by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "God never intended for one group of people to live in superfluous, inordinate wealth, while others lived in abject, deadening poverty. Luca and Josh, back to you.
Wow, Luca and Josh, fantastic research. I'm sure this will open up all the eyes of American people regarding the issue of poverty with colored people in the United States. That'll be all for now. Tune in later at noon for another story.